We've seen a lot of comments asking for a no recoil gun. A few weeks ago, someone even asked how flinch works. So today, we're going to explain both. Recoil is pretty simple. It's just two things: the pattern and the fire rate, which is how fast you complete the pattern. For example, this pattern isn't too hard to control, but if you speed it up a lot, like to 1110 RPM, it's tough. On the other hand, if you slow it down to 410 RPM, it's easier to handle even if it's not perfect. Flinch, on the other hand, is a bit more complicated. It depends on two things: the shooter and the person being shot at. For the shooter, the bullet impact and fire rate of their gun affect how much flinch they experience. For the person being shot, there's one thing: their gun's flinch resistance. So the flinch you feel is basically bullet impact times flinch resistance equals flinch felt. And you get that each time you get shot. So if you get shot by two weapons with exact same stats, the one with faster fire rate will feel like it's giving you more flinch, similar to recoil pretty much. By the way, the game makers added a flinch reduction over distance to balance ARs and LMGs. So bullet impact gets weaker as you shoot farther away. For SMGs, it goes from 100% to 30% of its original power. And remember, the total kick of your gun is a mix of recoil and flinch. Now that we've set the basics, let's go through some quote-unquote no-kick weapons, starting with SMGs. We're going to be pretty forgiving here because some guns have crazy recoil patterns, like the PPSH. Some of the smoothest are the OTS-9 and the Switchblade X9. They have recoil that's easy to follow and barely any flinch. They're honestly easy to use. Now, the Switchblade kinda sucks because it can't 4-shot kill very well, but it's really easy to control. That's why people love it. Next up, obviously, we've got the PP19 Bison. It has a similar recoil pattern but times about 20% less. It's also about 30% slower, making the recoil feel half as bad to manage. Similar to the Bison, we have the HG40, which, by the way, is super underrated. Compared to the Bison, the recoil pattern is a bit faster, even though the fire rate is similar, and the flinch is about 5% lower. Last in the SMG category is the PDW. We've noticed it's not very popular in all regions. It's not at all in North America or Latin America. It's the most used SMG with the Fennec in the EU, and it's not that common in Asia. Now, I want to talk about the PDW because it's a great example of something. If you've used the PDW, you'll notice it doesn't have any recoil. But if you look at the pattern, it seems to go left at some point. Well, the faster your weapon moves sideways, the less you see the horizontal recoil because you have to adjust for the movement. So, the recoil doesn't even seem hard to control. Now, the air category. Funnily enough, you'll see a pattern with these three ARs I chose. First, we have the Grau 556. It used to be the easiest gun to use, but its range is the only thing holding it back. An 18-meter 4-shot kill isn't good enough for a flex AR, but it's still super easy to control. It has recoil as low as the Bison and even less flinch. And this isn't even the lowest recoil build we could do. Next, we have the Type 19. It actually replaced the Grau as the easiest gun to use. Even though the recoil pattern looks similar, the Type 19 has half the flinch of the Grau, making it super stable in fights, unlike the Grau, which can be tricky. And the third one is the BP50. It's the easiest gun to use right now. If you paid attention, all three ARs I mentioned were the last ARs added to the game. Interesting, right? Anyway, the BP50 doesn't have the lowest recoil or flinch, but it's super easy to use because of its fire rate, magazine size, and other things. Now, you might want something a bit more chill with no recoil. That makes more sense than having like a 1000 RPM gun with no recoil. That's why we're going to talk about LMGs. The first one is the MG42. It has a crazy 1000 RPM. The recoil pattern is pretty easy to follow, and even at that speed, it's still easy to control. And I'm not even talking about the flinch, which is lower than the Type 19 at 0.39. Be careful with this build though, because this is the absolute most no recoil build in the game with the slowest strafe build we found. On the other side, we have the UL736. It's almost twice as slow, but the recoil pattern is one of the easiest to control. The flinch isn't its best at 0.8, but it's still low enough to be easy to use. Right in the middle is the PKM, which we personally love. The recoil goes straight up and at about the same speed as the UL. The flinch is even lower, and even though it looks like it kicks more, it's basically the same as the UL. But the PKM has a bullet impact of 1.5, which is pretty high, making enemies suffer in gunfights, which is exactly what you'll do once you start using the best guns. In case you missed it, we just posted our top guns for the season right here.